Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well. Today I will be taking you through my latest CD purchases, and these are all from charity shops and car boot sales, and they're all £1 or less. Starting off, we've got Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers and A Night in Tunisia. This is a 1957 recording by a short-lived sextet version of the band. The BUZZCOCKS and a double CD bringing together their first two albums. It's budget packaging, so you don't get a booklet or anything, but it's still quite nice to have. Don BYAS, this is a name I hadn't heard of, and he is a tenor saxophone player, and he is an American, and he lived in Paris in the late 40s and into the 1950s. And these are recordings he made there in 1950, 51 and 52. And COLTRANE Ole, he recorded this album a year after Miles Davis had done Sketches of Spain, and there's similar influences to Miles Davis's record in that he's taken flamenco harmonies as a starting point for his improvisations on the track Ole. And this was quite a nice package. It's a band I didn't think I particularly liked, but I think they're deserving of a double CD and with a nice booklet bringing together the early days of their career. The Darts were a mainstay of Top of the Pops in 1977-78. It's got their two big singles on there, Daddy Cool and The Boy from New York City. It brings together their first two albums, and then it's got a whole load of bonus tracks as well. The Dead Kennedys, and probably their most famous album, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. And this is a double CD package that was put out by Cherry Red Records a few years ago now, and it's got a second disc, and on the second disc it's only got 6 tracks, but it's got Holiday in Cambodia, Kill the Poor, and a few other tracks, and it's quite a nice booklet in there as well. Back to the jazz and the Essential Vic Dickinson. This is another jazz musician I wasn't aware of, and he was a trombonist, and these are tracks that were recorded in 1953 and 1954, and they were recorded for the Vanguard record label, produced by John Hammond. And next up we've got the Four Brothers. This is a guitar band from Zimbabwe, and they were incredibly popular with the DJs John Peel and Andy Kershaw in the 1980s. In fact, John Peel once said that they were the best live band in the world, and the drumming and guitar playing on this is so infectious, and it's a really good CD if you can find it. This was something I didn't enjoy as much. I've liked some of the material that E has released as the Eels over the years. This is a more recent album. I think it came out in 2018, so it's just 2 albums back. But I think you know when a musician's creative juices are starting to dry up when they start recording a lullaby to their baby child, which he does on this CD, and there are 1 or 2 up-tempo tracks, but it does become a pretty boring album towards the end, I'm afraid. There's something to liven you up though. This is the very best of Aretha Franklin, so it's all the 1960s period that's covered, and it's got the obvious tracks on there, but then there's 1 or 2 which I'd not heard before. So we've got her version of The Weight and Eleanor Rigby, you've got The House That Jack Built, and it's as well as the classics. I love Chain of Fools, and that's on here. So that was a really good buy. Next up, we've got a CD by the band Greys, and it's called Age Hasn't Spoiled You. I saw this band live a few years ago, and they had incredible energy. And it says on the label at the front, the Toronto post-punks eschew their trademark frenzy for a more cerebral and cinematic affair. It sounds like it could be quite interesting, that one. Next up, PJ Harvey and John Parrish, A Woman, a Man Walked By. I'm not a big fan of PJ Harvey, but I've heard good reports about this album, and I think John Parrish is a long-term guitar player. And Richard Hawley, Fervour. Now this is an artist who I think was at his creative peak when he recorded this album, compared to say Eels, where the creative juices had well and truly dried up. This is a fantastic album. There's a real variety of music on there. Some tracks have got really raucous guitar playing, and he's a really likeable personality as well. I've seen him live and thoroughly enjoyed him. Back to some African music, and Kenge, who are from Kenya. They use traditional instrumentation, including flute, horn, one-stringed fiddle, a soundbox, a gong, percussion, bass drum and bass, and they play what I think is a unique version of the Kenyan electric guitar sound, which is known as Benga beat. So it's all done on acoustic instrumentation. They're really long tracks, and they become quite hypnotic if you're in the right mood to listen to them. It's a very long CD. It's got 8 tracks and lasts 70 minutes. But I quite enjoyed that. And this is an absolute favourite artist of mine, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. There was a great best of Johnny Kidd that came out in the late 1970s, which I bought, and this is like a companion piece to that album. It's got the same writer doing the liner notes, and it duplicates some of the tracks, but it also adds some alternate versions of some other tracks. So if you've not heard anything by Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, I can recommend most of the tracks on here. And there's also a single which the backing band, the Pirates, issued in about 1964, and that's really worth checking out. My Babe and Casting My Spell by the Pirates, recorded live in the studio. It sounds like it could have been recorded yesterday. It's just one of the classic British singles of the 1960s. This is a later album by B.B. King, and it's called, can't see that, Blues on the Bayou, and it's from about 1998. Right, first bit of folk today, and this is a tremendous album, Law. They're a trio made up of Chris Drever on vocals and guitar, Martin Green on accordion, and Aidan O'Rourke on fiddle. And this is a reissue of their first album, which was called Lightweights and Gentlemen, and it's also got a second CD which was recorded just after that album came out, called Live at the Bongo Club, Edinburgh. The live CD just shows off their improvisational skills. It's like listening to an acoustic version of the Grateful Dead in terms of the improvisational skill that's required to play the songs that they do. It's just amazing at times to think that there's only 3 musicians on the stage. And the studio album is equally fantastic. There's so many great tracks on here. and I love Himba. What else? Freeborn Man. Gallow Hill is my favourite track on the album. And since this CD, they've expanded their repertoire and moved into some more experimental music in recent years. And I think one of their recent albums was produced by John Parrish, who I just mentioned earlier, who works with PJ Harvey. And they are one of the great folk bands of the 21st century, UK folk bands anyway. Then we go to late 60s English pop, Marmalade. I've not had a chance to listen to this CD yet, but it's got some deep cuts which I've not heard before, as well as Reflections of My Life, which is a tremendous track and I can highly recommend. This is a double CD of 4 albums by Freda Payne, Band of Gold, Contact, Reaching Out, and the tracks from the best of Freda Payne, which aren't already duplicated on the other 3 albums. And we've got Del Shannon and no less than 30 tracks here of the tracks that he recorded in the early 60s. So you've got all the obvious ones like Runaway, Hats Off to Larry, but quite a few which I've not heard before. And another folk CD. I got this, I can't believe this, at a car boot sale for 20 pence, and it's a double CD. It's comes in a hard case and has you can't really see this, a lovely booklet on the front as well. Show of Hands, they are a duo of Steve Knightley and Phil Beer. They've been going for many years. They've got a really loyal fan base, and to me at times the songwriting and the presentation of the songs reminds me of an English rural folk version of Bruce Springsteen, if you can imagine that. And some of the songs on here can compete with Richard Thompson in terms of the lyrical depth and the emotion within the songs. So Widdicombe Fair, you should really check that one out. It's fantastic. And next up we've got Soft Machine Legacy, and this was a 4-piece that recorded in 2013. This CD came out, and the 4-piece consists of John Etheridge on electric guitar, John Marshall drums, Ray Babington bass guitar, and all 3 of them were in the Soft Machine in the early 70s, and they're joined by Theo Travis on tenor sax, flute and Fender Rhodes piano. After this album they decided, because they were effectively 3/4 of Soft Machine in the 70s, to release their next album as Soft Machine. It's a bit samey and can't really compete, well, even with Soft Machine from the early 70s, but it's still worth having, and I was quite pleased to pick this up for £1. And next up, This Mortal Coil. I think there's been about 2 or 3 CDs issued under this name, and it's Ivo from the 4AD record label. He put together a group with guest musicians mainly drawn from other bands on 4AD, and so you've got the members of the Cocteau Twins on here, and there's 3 songs I particularly like. There's versions of Kangaroo and Holocaust, the Big Star songs, and also probably the most famous track on this is Song to the Siren, where it's the Cocteau Twins on vocals and guitar. And this is a nice little package on a budget reissue label Jasmine, and it brings together the first 4 albums by the Ventures under the title of No Trespassing. And finally, one of my favourite bands of all time, and a band I've been lucky enough to see live a few times in recent years, the Zombies, and and it's been released under the title The Zombies, featuring Colin Blunstone and Rod Argent, and obviously it can't compete with Odyssey and Oracle, but the songwriting is there of a high standard, and also Colin Blunstone's voice is fantastic, and Rod Argent is one of the best keyboard players to come out of rock music in the UK. So possibly not an album to get if you're not a hardcore fan of the Zombies, but I enjoyed it very much. And that's about, I think it's 25 CDs. I did pick up 1 or 2 others, which I decided not to show, just to keep this video down to a manageable time span. I'll keep looking for CDs in charity shops and car boot sales. At the moment, it's the weather's been appalling here in the UK. It's been raining non-stop, and it puts you off wanting to go out anywhere. But I'm sure I'll get out for a couple of days next week and try and find some more CDs to show you. Until then, have a nice weekend, and bye for now.